After a car accident, a raccoon refuses to move from the wreckage. When police learn the poignant reason, they're moved to tears. And if you cherish your family and love stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and avoid 10 years of bad luck. The late afternoon sun beat down on Route 9 in New Jersey as traffic crawled to a sudden halt. Metal crunched against metal, and the screech of brakes pierced the air. Cars swerved in different directions, creating a domino effect of near misses and sudden stops. Steam rose from a crumpled hood in the center lane, mixing with the golden sunlight filtering through the trees that lined the highway. Officer Mike Thompson received the call at 3:47 p.m. Multiple vehicle collision on Route 9, mile marker 127. No injuries reported yet. He flipped on his sirens and navigated through the building traffic, his 20 years of experience evident in the calm, methodical way he maneuvered his patrol car through the growing maze of stopped vehicles. As he approached the scene, Mike took in the details with practiced efficiency. A silver sedan had rear-ended a blue SUV, causing moderate damage to both vehicles. The driver stood on the shoulder, exchanging information and gesturing animatedly. Other motorists had pulled over, some filming with their phones, others trying to direct traffic around the accident. Standard procedure, routine chaos, except for one peculiar detail that caught Mike's attention. A raccoon stood at the edge of the road, its gray fur ruffled by the breeze from passing cars. Unlike most wildlife that scattered at the first sign of human activity, this one remained firmly in place. It moved back and forth along the guardrail, its masked face turning repeatedly toward the damaged vehicles. Mike had responded to countless accidents involving wildlife, but he'd never seen an animal behave quite like this. He parked his patrol car at an angle to protect the accident scene and activated his light bar. As he stepped out, the raccoon's behavior became even more unusual. Instead of fleeing from the approaching human, it merely backed up a few steps, maintaining its position near the scene. Its dark eyes followed Mike's movements with an intensity that seemed almost human. Officer Sarah Chun arrived minutes later, her rookie status evident in her eager stride, but tempered by professional restraint. She was 6 months out of the academy, and Mike had worked with her on several occasions. She approached him, duty belt creaking with each step, her body camera already activated. "Officer Thompson," she greeted him, then noticed his attention was divided. "What's with the raccoon?" Mike shook his head slightly. "Not sure. Been here since I arrived. Won't leave." Sarah pulled out her phone and began recording the animal's behavior, her training and documentation kicking in. "That's not normal, right? They usually run." "Never seen anything like it," Mike confirmed, watching as the raccoon paced, occasionally standing on its hind legs to peer toward the damaged vehicles. The scene grew more crowded as additional first responders arrived. An ambulance parked nearby, its EMTs checking on the drivers involved. Traffic cops began setting up cones to direct vehicles around the accident. Through it all, the raccoon remained, its presence drawing curious glances from emergency personnel. Sarah continued filming, her camera capturing the raccoon's persistent behavior. "Look at how it keeps trying to get closer to the car," she pointed out. "It's like it's trying to tell us something." Mike nodded, years of investigative instinct stirring. In his experience, when something seemed out of place, it usually meant something was wrong. The raccoon's behavior wasn't just unusual, it was deliberate. It moved with purpose, its attention fixed on the damaged vehicles with an urgency that suggested this wasn't simply a curious animal attracted to the commotion. The sun continued its westward dew, Renee, casting longer shadows across the highway. Traffic backed up for miles, horns honked in the distance, and the normal procedures for accident documentation continued. But throughout it all, both officers found their attention repeatedly drawn to the determined raccoon that refused to abandon its post. Mike Thompson crossed the asphalt with measured steps, drawing on memories of his grandmother's lessons about wildlife. Growing up in rural Pennsylvania, she taught him that animals weren't just mindless creatures. They could show remarkable intelligence and loyalty. "Animals speak to us," she'd say, "if we're willing to listen." Back then, he dismissed it as the romantic notions of an old woman. Now, watching the raccoon's deliberate movements, Those words echoed in his mind. He kept his distance, close enough to observe but far enough to avoid startling the animal. The raccoon tracked his movements, its head tilting slightly as if assessing his intentions. Unlike the frantic energy most wild animals displayed near humans, this one showed an almost calculated restraint. It would take a few steps back when Mike moved closer, but never fled the scene entirely. "Easy there," Mike spoke softly, more to himself than the raccoon. The afternoon heat had begun to fade, and the shadows from the nearby trees created shifting patterns on the ground. Traffic continued to inch past the accident scene, but the immediate area had cleared enough to hear the subtle sounds around them. That's when it happened. The raccoon lifted its head and emitted a high-pitched chirping sound, somewhere between a whistle and a chitter. The noise cut through the ambient sounds of traffic and emergency vehicles, drawing attention from several nearby officers. The sound wasn't aggressive or frightened. It seemed more like a call, a signal meant to elicit a response. The other officers had finished their initial accident documentation. Insurance information had been exchanged, statements taken, and tow trucks were on their way. By all normal procedures, the scene should have been clearing. Yet the raccoon's presence had created an unusual atmosphere of expectation. Several officers paused in their duties, watching the interaction between Mike and the animal. The raccoon made the sound again, this time moving deliberately toward the damaged silver sedan. It stopped about 10 feet from the vehicle, sat back on its haunches, and fixed its gaze on the undercarriage. The position seemed almost staged, like a sentinel standing guard. Additional patrol cars arrived, their lights creating a kaleidoscope of red and blue against the metal guardrails. Each new arrival noticed the peculiar standoff between the veteran officer and the raccoon. Some reached for their phones to document the scene, while others gathered in small groups, speaking in hushed tones. The raccoon remained seated, occasionally making that distinct chirping sound. Its behavior defied everything Mike knew about wild animals, particularly raccoons, which typically avoided human contact at all costs. This one seemed determined to communicate something, its dark eyes reflecting an intelligence that made Mike increasingly certain this wasn't random animal behavior. Sarah moved closer to Mike, her phone still recording. "I've never seen anything like this," she whispered. "It's almost like it's trying to tell us something." Other officers began to form theories. "Maybe it was hit by another car earlier?" one suggested. "Could be rabid," another warned, though the raccoon showed none of the typical signs of rabies. Its movements were too coordinated, too purposeful. The tow truck operators arrived, but hesitated to approach the vehicle. The raccoon's presence and unusual behavior had created an unspoken understanding among everyone at the scene. Something wasn't right, and until they figured out what it was, standard procedures would have to wait. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the highway, the raccoon maintained its vigil. It hadn't moved from its seated position, though its head occasionally turned to track movement around the scene. Its eyes would frequently return to the damaged car, and each time it did, it would make that distinctive chirping sound. More officers gathered, drawn by radio chatter about the unusual situation. The scene had transformed from a routine traffic accident into something else entirely. The raccoon had become the center of attention, its persistent behavior creating a mystery that none of them could ignore. Mike Thompson had investigated thousands of accidents over his career, but instinct told him this one was different. Walking toward the damaged silver sedan, he kept one eye on the raccoon, which watched his every move with unwavering attention. The late afternoon light glinted off broken glass scattered across the asphalt, and the crumpled metal of the car's front end told the story of the impact. He circled the vehicle slowly, noting every detail. The raccoon's eyes followed him, and its chirping became more frequent as he approached the driver's side. The animal's behavior seemed to intensify whenever anyone got close to specific areas of the car. Mike pulled out his flashlight, even though there was still plenty of daylight. Years of experience had taught him to look in the shadows, the places others might miss. Sarah approached, her footsteps careful and measured. She'd holstered her phone, but kept her body camera running. "Officer Thompson," she began, her voice low and professional despite her evident excitement. "I've been reading about wildlife behavior in urban areas. Did you know raccoons are incredibly intelligent? They can remember solutions to problems for up to 3 years. Mike nodded, continuing his inspection. They're smart all right. Too smart sometimes. He crouched down to look under the vehicle, careful to maintain a safe distance from the raccoon. But this isn't normal behavior, even for a clever raccoon. Sarah positioned herself on the other side of the car, maintaining the perimeter they'd established. I've been thinking about the wildlife corridor project they're planning for this area, she said, her eyes scanning the undercarriage. So many animals get hit on this stretch of road. We need better ways to protect them. The other officers had formed a loose circle around the scene, their initial skepticism giving way to genuine interest. The raccoon's persistent presence had created an unusual sense of unity among the first responders. Even the tow truck drivers, usually impatient to clear accident scenes, waited quietly, caught up in the unfolding mystery. "Look at this," Mike called out, pointing his flashlight at something under the car. The raccoon immediately responded with a series of rapid chirps, moving slightly closer despite the circle of humans. Sarah crossed to Mike's position, careful not to make any sudden movements. The growing crowd of emergency personnel began working together without explicit coordination. Someone brought over more powerful lights. Another officer retrieved a telescoping inspection mirror from their patrol car. The normal competitive atmosphere between departments melted away as everyone focused on solving the mystery of the raccoon's behavior. "We need to start moving these pieces carefully," Mike announced, pointing to various sections of damaged vehicle parts. "Something's not right here, and that raccoon knows it." He stood up, brushing off his uniform pants, and began organizing the impromptu team. "Johnson, get some gloves from your kit. Martinez, bring that pry bar from your trunk. Sarah, keep documenting everything." The raccoon's behavior grew more animated as they began working, though it maintained its distance. Its chirping became more frequent, almost like encouragement. The animal's obvious intelligence and determination had transformed the mood of the entire scene. What had started as a routine accident response had become something else entirely, a rescue operation of some kind, though they didn't yet know exactly what they were trying to rescue. Officers who had arrived thinking this was just another traffic accident found themselves caught up in the unfolding drama. They worked methodically, removing debris piece by piece, careful not to disturb anything that might be vital evidence. The raccoon watched every movement, its dark eyes reflecting an almost human-like concern. Sarah continued filming while helping coordinate the effort. "This could change how we handle wildlife encounters," she said, her voice filled with purpose. "People need to see that animals aren't just nuisances to be cleared away. They're intelligent beings with real emotions and connections." The sun had dropped lower on the horizon, casting long shadows across the scene. The emergency lights created an otherworldly atmosphere as the team worked, their movements careful and deliberate. The raccoon maintained its position, occasionally standing on its hind legs for a better view of their progress. Officer Martinez's pry bar made a metallic groan as he carefully lifted a section of twisted fender. The raccoon's chirping increased immediately, creating an urgent chorus that made everyone freeze. Mike dropped to his knees, flashlight beam cutting through the growing darkness beneath the vehicle. "I see something moving," he announced, his voice tight with concentration. The beam of light caught a flash of fur, different from the adult raccoon that had been watching them. In the narrow space between the crushed metal and asphalt, barely visible behind a tangle of wiring and broken plastic, was a tiny form. "It's a baby," Sarah breathed, her body camera capturing the moment. "There's a baby raccoon trapped under there." The revelation sent a ripple through the gathered crowd. The adult raccoon's behavior suddenly made perfect sense. This wasn't just any animal refusing to leave an accident scene. This was a mother refusing to abandon her child. The trapped kit let out a weak cry, barely audible over the ambient traffic noise. The mother raccoon responded immediately with a series of soft chirps, moving closer to the car than she had dared before. Her previous wariness gave way to maternal concern, though she still maintained enough distance to let the humans work. "We need to move carefully," Mike instructed, taking charge of the situation. "That kit could be injured. One wrong move with this debris could make things worse." He turned to Sarah. "Call animal control. Tell them we need someone with wildlife medical experience. Fast." The team worked with renewed purpose. The mother raccoon's desperate vigil, her refusal to leave, her attempts to communicate, everything clicked into place. What had seemed strange or mysterious now appeared as a powerful testament to maternal instinct and determination. Martinez and Johnson worked in tandem, carefully removing pieces of the car's undercarriage. Other officers held lights and provided tools. Even passing motorists who had been frustrated by the traffic delay changed their attitudes when word spread about what was happening. Some pulled over to offer assistance or supplies. The kit made another sound, stronger this time. The mother raccoon chittered back, performing a small dance of anxiety at the edge of the working space. Her eyes never left the spot where her baby was trapped, and she seemed to be fighting every instinct to rush in herself. "Almost there," Mike muttered, reaching into the space they'd cleared. The kit was wedged behind what remained of the car's front bumper, protected from the initial impact by a pocket of crushed metal that had formed around it. The baby raccoon's fur was matted with grease and dirt, but it was moving. Sarah maintained her recording, but moved closer to help. "Easy, little one," she said softly. "We're going to get you out of there." The mother raccoon chewed intently, her previous wariness of humans seemingly forgotten in her concern for her offspring. Time seemed to slow as Mike carefully maneuvered his hands around the kit. One wrong move could spook the baby, causing it to retreat further into the wreckage or, worse, injure itself trying to escape. The mother's chirping provided a constant soundtrack to the delicate operation. Finally, with infinite care, Mike managed to get both hands around the tiny body. "Got it," he announced, slowly withdrawing his arms from under the car. The kit squirmed weakly in his grasp, its small form covered in grease and debris, but apparently intact. A collective breath seemed to be released by everyone present. The mother raccoon made a series of excited chittering sounds, moving back and forth anxiously as Mike cradled her baby. Sarah quickly cleared space in a nearby animal carrier someone had brought, laying down a soft blanket. The transformation in the atmosphere was immediate and profound. What had started as a routine traffic accident, then evolved into a mysterious standoff with wildlife, had become something that touched everyone present. The mother raccoon's devotion, her desperate attempts to communicate with humans, her trust in staying despite her natural fears. It all spoke to something universal about the power of parental love. The waiting period for the wildlife specialist felt like hours, though the dashboard clock in Mike's patrol car showed only 40 minutes had passed. The rescued kit rested in the carrier, wrapped in the blanket, while its mother maintained a close watch from a safe distance. The scene had transformed into an impromptu wildlife rescue station, with officers forming a protective perimeter to keep curious onlookers at a respectful distance. Mike and Sarah sat in their patrol car's open doors, positioned to monitor both the kit and its mother. The adrenaline of the rescue had worn off, leaving them in a contemplative mood. Sarah hadn't stopped filming, determined to document every aspect of this unprecedented situation. "My daughter would love this," Mike said suddenly, breaking the comfortable silence. "She's studying veterinary medicine at Rutgers, always bringing home injured animals when she was younger. Drove her mother crazy." He smiled at the memory, watching the mother raccoon's careful vigilance. Sarah lowered her phone, interested in this glimpse into her senior officer's personal life. "Is that why you were so patient with the situation?" Most officers would have called animal control immediately and tried to clear the scene. "Maybe," Mike admitted. "When you've been on the force as long as I have, you learn to trust your instincts." Something about that mother's behavior. It reminded me of how my wife used to wait up for our daughter no matter how late it got. That same kind of determination. The kit stirred in its carrier, prompting an immediate response from its mother. She chittered softly, and the baby answered with a weak cry. Sarah captured the interaction on video, her face illuminated by the phone's screen in the growing darkness. "I'm going to edit this footage tonight," Sarah said, her voice filled with purpose. "People need to see this. Not just the rescue, but the whole thing. How she tried to communicate with us, how she trusted us enough to help. Maybe it'll make them think twice about how they treat wildlife." Mike nodded, understanding her passion. In his 20 years on the force, he'd seen countless instances of human-wildlife conflict, most ending far less positively than this one. When I started this job, I thought it was just about enforcing laws. But it's really about protecting all lives, human and animal. Sarah turned to him, her expression earnest in the flashing lights of the patrol cars. That's exactly why I joined the force. Everyone thought I was crazy, giving up a corporate job to become a police officer. But I wanted to make a real difference. See, not just push papers around a desk. The wildlife specialist truck pulled up, its headlights illuminating the scene. Dr. Maria Rodriguez stepped out, her experienced movement speaking to years of similar calls. She approached the carrier slowly, assessing the situation. "The kit seems alert," she reported after a brief examination. "Some minor scratches and bruising, but nothing appears broken. The biggest concern is shock and possible internal injuries. We'll need to take it to the Wildlife Center for a full checkup." The mother raccoon watched the proceedings intently, moving closer than she had to anyone except Mike. Dr. Rodriguez noticed this and smiled. "She knows we're helping. Raccoons are incredibly intelligent animals. They can recognize human faces and remember people who've helped them." Sarah continued filming as Dr. Rodriguez prepared to transport the kit. "What about the mother?" she asked, concern evident in her voice. "Will they be separated?" "We'll trap her humanely and take her with us," Dr. Rodriguez assured them. "These two have a strong bond. Separating them would cause unnecessary stress for both." Mike watched as the specialist worked, remembering all the times his daughter had begged to keep injured animals they'd found. "How long will their recovery take?" he asked, already thinking about following up on their condition. "A few weeks, probably," Dr. Rodriguez replied. "Once they're both cleared medically, we'll release them together in a safer area, away from the highway. Would you like me to keep you updated on their progress?" The following morning, Sarah's edited video hit social media. She'd spent hours carefully compiling the footage, showing the mother raccoon's persistent vigil, the coordinated rescue effort, and the emotional reunion. By noon, local news stations were calling the police department, requesting interviews and additional footage. Mike sat at his desk, scrolling through an endless stream of notifications on his department-issued phone. The story had struck a chord with people far beyond New Jersey. Comments poured in from across the country, praising the officer's patience and compassion. Hashtag Highway Heroes and hashtag Raccoon Rescue were trending on multiple platforms. "Thompson," Captain Rodriguez called from his office. "Got a minute?" Mike entered the captain's office, finding him surrounded by printouts of news articles. "This rescue story's blown up. The mayor's office is calling. They want to organize some kind of public event, maybe a fundraiser for wildlife protection." The department's public relations officer, Janet Chun, burst in without knocking, her tablet displaying more viral posts. "The videos hit 2 million views," she announced breathlessly. "We got major wildlife organizations reaching out. They want to partner with us on a public awareness campaign about wildlife corridors and road safety." Mike shifted uncomfortably in his chair, unaccustomed to this kind of attention. "It was just good police work," he said. "Anyone would have done the same." "But they didn't," Janet countered. "Most departments would have cleared that scene in 20 minutes. You and Officer Chun saw something different. You listened to that mother raccoon when everyone else would have shooed her away." Captain Rodriguez nodded in agreement. "We want you to be the face of this campaign, Mike. 20 years on the force, spotless record, and now this. You're the perfect representative for showing how law enforcement can protect all members of our community, human and animal." The initial fundraising meeting was scheduled for that afternoon. The conference room filled quickly with an unlikely mix of people: police officers, wildlife experts, local politicians, and community activists. Sarah arrived early, setting up her laptop to present the footage that had captured the public's imagination. "The timing is perfect," announced Councilmember Patricia Martinez. "We've been trying to gather support for the Wildlife Corridor project for months. This story shows exactly why we need it." She spread out blueprints showing proposed animal crossings over and under major highways. Dr. Rodriguez from the Wildlife Center joined virtually, providing an update on the rescued raccoons. "Both mother and baby are doing well," she reported, sharing photos of the kit's recovery. We're using their story to educate people about wildlife behavior and the importance of patience in animal encounters. The energy in the room was electric. Ideas flew back and forth. Educational programs for schools, training sessions for other police departments, community outreach initiatives. What had started as a simple accident response was transforming into a movement. Mike watched it all with a mixture of pride and amazement. He caught Sarah's eye across the room, seeing his own emotions reflected in her expression. They'd both joined the force to make a difference, but neither had expected it to happen quite like this. "We need to think bigger," Janet declared, writing rapidly on a whiteboard. "This isn't just about one rescue or one highway. It's about changing how people think about wildlife in urban areas." "Officer Thompson, would you be willing to speak at the State Police Conference next month?" Before Mike could respond, his phone buzzed with a text from his daughter. "Dad, my whole vet school is talking about your raccoon rescue. So proud of you." Red heart, he smiled, remembering all the times he'd helped her rescue injured animals as a child. The meeting continued well into the evening, with committees forming and responsibilities being assigned. Mike found himself appointed as lead coordinator for the police department's new wildlife response training program. Sarah was tasked with creating a social media strategy to maintain public interest and support. As the room finally began to clear, Captain Rodriguez pulled Mike aside. "You've started something important here, Thompson, but I should warn you, we've received reports of increased poaching activity in the area. Some people aren't as excited about wildlife protection as we are." In the weeks following the raccoon rescue, Mike and Sarah found themselves working together more frequently. Their shared experience had created an unexpected partnership, strengthened by their common passion for wildlife protection. They spent their patrol breaks discussing ideas for the upcoming wildlife awareness campaign, their conversations flowing easily between professional planning and personal revelations. "I used to work in marketing," Sarah explained one afternoon as they patrolled the areas near the wildlife corridor construction site. "Everyone thought I was crazy to leave a six-figure salary for police work. But sitting in meetings discussing brand strategies while real problems existed outside, it just felt hollow." Mike nodded, understanding the need for meaningful work. "My daughter says the same thing. She could make more money in a private practice, but she wants to work with wildlife. Says it's about purpose, not paycheck." Their patrol car rounded a bend, and Sarah suddenly sat up straighter. "Mike, look at that truck." She pointed to a suspicious vehicle parked half-hidden among the trees. Its bed was covered with a tarp, and the license plate was partially obscured with mud. Mike slowed the car, years of experience telling him something wasn't right. "Call it in," he instructed quietly. "Get back up rolling this way, but tell them to come in silent." Before Sarah could reach for the radio, they spotted movement in the trees. Two men emerged carrying what looked like hunting rifles, definitely not in season and not in a legal hunting area. They quickly stowed their equipment in the truck and began to pull away. "This is Officer Chen," Sarah spoke into her radio, her voice steady despite the tension. "Possible poaching activity observed near mile marker 131. Requesting immediate backup. Suspects are mobile in a dark green Ford pickup, partial plate visible." Mike followed the truck at a distance, lights off, maintaining visual contact without alerting the suspects. "They're probably part of the group Captain Rodriguez warned us about," he said grimly. "Poaching's increased since the wildlife protection initiatives hit the news. Some see it as their last chance to hunt here before the new regulations take effect." Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Rodriguez at the Wildlife Center. "More injured animals coming in. Signs of intentional harm. These aren't accidents." She showed the message to Mike, her expression hardening with determination. "We need to catch them in the act," Mike said, keeping the truck in sight while maintaining a careful distance. "But we have to be smart about it. These people are organized and they're getting desperate." The truck ahead turned onto a dirt access road, kicking up dust in the fading daylight. Mike killed their headlights completely, relying on his knowledge of the area to follow safely. Sarah checked her gear, making sure her body camera was recording. "I never thought I'd be doing anything like this," she admitted, checking her phone for updates from backup units. "In the academy, they talk about protecting and serving, but this feels different. More personal somehow." Mike understood exactly what she meant. The raccoon rescue had changed something in both of them. awakened a deeper sense of purpose. "That mother raccoon trusted us to help her baby," he said quietly. "Feels like we owe it to all of them to stop these guys." Their radio crackled softly with updates from approaching backup units. The poacher's truck had stopped in a clearing ahead, its occupants apparently unaware they were being watched. Mike and Sarah observed as the men began unloading their equipment, their movements suggesting they'd done this many times before. 3 minutes until backup arrives," Sarah whispered, watching the suspects through binoculars. "They're setting up some kind of trap line. This isn't random hunting, they're professionals." Mike's jaw tightened as he recognized one of the men in the clearing. The figure's stance and movements were familiar, bringing back memories of hunting trips from years ago. He felt his stomach sink as the realization hit him. He knew exactly who they were dealing with. Sarah noticed his change in demeanor. "Mike, what is it?" The forest had grown darker, with only the faint glow of the poacher's flashlights visible through the trees. Mike and Sarah had positioned themselves strategically, waiting for backup to arrive before making their move. The familiar figure Mike had recognized continued setting up traps, unaware of the surveillance. "That's Jack Reeves," Mike finally whispered, his voice tight. "Used to go hunting with him years ago, before I realized what kind of hunting he really did. He knows these woods better than anyone, and he's not afraid to take risks." Sarah processed this information, adjusting their tactical approach. "How many exits from this clearing?" she asked, already thinking through containment strategies. The backup units would need precise positioning to prevent escape. 3, Mike replied. "The main access road we came in on, an old logging trail to the north, and a steep ravine to the east that leads to the highway." He paused, watching Jack's methodical movements. He'll have them all mapped out. Probably has vehicles staged at least at 2 points. The radio chirped softly. Backup units were in position. For patrol cars had silently surrounded the area, their lights off, officers waiting for the signal. The plan was to contain the situation without spooking the suspects into a dangerous pursuit. Suddenly, a flash of movement caught their attention. The mother raccoon from their rescue, distinctively marked and now wearing a wildlife center tracking collar, appeared at the edge of the clearing. She moved cautiously, apparently investigating the unfamiliar human activity in her territory. No, Sarah breathed, watching as the raccoon drew closer to the poacher's position. She'll trigger their traps. Before they could react, another figure emerged from the shadows. It was the second poacher, carrying what looked like a high-powered tranquilizer gun. The equipment suggested they weren't just hunting for sport, they were capturing animals alive. Mike's hand tightened on his radio. The situation had become more complex. If they moved too soon, they risked the animal's safety. If they waited too long, they might lose their chance to catch the poachers in the act. The raccoon froze, sensing danger. Her natural instincts conflicted with her curiosity about the human sense. She recognized some of them from her rescue. This moment of hesitation put her directly in the poacher's sights. "All units, move in now," Mike commanded into his radio, his voice barely above a whisper. "Suspects are armed with tranquilizer weapons. Approach with caution. Be aware of civilian wildlife in the area." The response was immediate and coordinated. Patrol cars burst into life, their lights painting the forest in red and blue. Officers emerged from multiple positions, creating a tight perimeter around the clearing. The poacher spun around, caught in the sudden illumination. "Police, drop your weapons." Sarah's voice rang out clear and authoritative. She had positioned herself behind a large oak tree, weapon drawn but aimed safely downward. The mother raccoon darted away from the chaos, disappearing into the underbrush. Jack Reeves, however, didn't seem surprised or particularly concerned by the police presence. He turned slowly, hands raised but with a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Mike Thompson," he called out, his voice carrying across the clearing. "Should have known you'd be the one to catch up to us eventually." His casual tone suggested this wasn't a simple case of local poaching. There was something bigger at play. The second poacher made a break for the ravine, but was quickly cut off by 2 officers who had anticipated this escape route. The tranquilizer gun clattered to the ground as they tackled him, securing him with handcuffs. Jack didn't move. His eyes locked with Mike's, conveying an unspoken message. This wasn't over. In fact, it was just beginning. The booking area of the police station hummed with unusual activity for this late hour. Jack Reeves sat in the interview room, still maintaining his unsettling calm, while Mike watched him through the one-way glass. Sarah stood beside Mike, reviewing the evidence they collected from the clearing. Professional-grade tranquilizer equipment, GPS tracking devices, and documentation that suggested a sophisticated operation. "This isn't just local poaching," Sarah said, spreading out photographs of the seized equipment. "This gear is worth thousands. And look at these coordinates." She pointed to a notebook filled with precise locations. They're mapping animal movement patterns across the entire state. Mike nodded grimly. Jack was always smart. Too smart to risk getting caught for simple hunting violations. He pressed his palms against the observation window, the weight of past friendship heavy in his stance. 20 years ago, we used to track deer together. He taught me everything I know about wildlife patterns. Never thought he'd use those skills like this. Through the glass, Jack looked directly at where he knew Mike would be standing, that knowing smile still playing at his lips. He'd only said one thing since his arrest. "You're on the wrong side of this one, Mike." Sarah pulled up Dr. Rodriguez's latest message on her phone. The Wildlife Center's documented 37 cases of suspicious injuries in the past month. Different species, but all showing signs of attempted capture rather than killing. They're taking these animals alive for something. The door opened, and Captain Rodriguez entered with a federal agent. "Thompson, Chen, meet Agent Phillips from Fish and Wildlife. This case just got bigger than we thought." Phillips laid out a series of photographs showing similar operations uncovered in other states. "We believe your friend in there is part of an international wildlife trafficking ring. They're not just poaching, they're collecting specific species for private collectors overseas. That raccoon you rescued? Her unusual behavior and intelligence made her a target." Mike felt his stomach turn. The mother raccoon's trust in humans during the rescue had likely made her more vulnerable to capture. His friendship with Jack suddenly took on a darker meaning. Had Jack been watching him all along, using their connection to gather intelligence on local wildlife? "There's more," Phillips continued. "We think someone inside the department has been feeding them information. The timing of their operations, the way they've avoided patrols, they've had help." The implication hung heavy in the air. Mike's mind raced through years of shared hunting stories, casual conversations about patrol routes, seemingly innocent questions about the Wildlife Corridor project. Had Jack been playing him all along? Sarah's body camera footage from the arrest played silently on a nearby screen. The professional quality of the poacher's equipment was clear now. These weren't opportunistic hunters, but well-funded professionals. "He wants to talk to you," Captain Rodriguez said to Mike. "Says he'll only speak to you. But understand this, if he's got someone inside the department, anything you discuss in there could be compromised." Mike straightened his uniform, feeling the weight of 2 decades of friendship and betrayal. "Let me do it," he said. "I know Jack. If there's a leak in the department, he'll try to use it against us. Maybe I can turn that around." Sarah touched his arm. "Be careful." That smile of his, he's got something planned. Mike entered the interview room, the door closing with a heavy click behind him. Jack looked up, his expression shifting to something almost sympathetic. "Sit down, old friend," Jack said softly. "We need to talk about what you think you're protecting. About what's really going on with your precious Wildlife Corridor project." "No games, Jack," Mike replied, remaining standing. 37 animals in 1 month. International trafficking. Someone inside helping you. Start talking. Jack leaned forward, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "Did you ever wonder why they approved that corridor project so quickly? Why suddenly there's all this money for wildlife protection? You're not solving a problem, Mike. You're helping them create one." The interview room felt smaller as Jack's words hung in the air. Mike remained standing, years of investigative experience telling him this was the moment everything would either make sense or fall apart. "Stop dancing around it, Jack," Mike demanded. "What's really going on with the corridor project?" Jack's smile finally faded, replaced by an expression Mike recognized from their hunting days, the look of someone about to reveal where the trail led. "I'll let you catch me tonight, Mike. Needed to show you the truth. That wildlife corridor? It's not just for protection. It's a pipeline, a perfect legal way to transport captured animals across state lines. Hide them in plain sight. Sarah watched through the glass, her phone recording every word. Agent Phillips stood beside her, his expression darkening with each revelation. Think about it, Jack continued. Who pushed hardest for those corridors? Follow the money. Your friend at the Wildlife Center, Dr. Rodriguez? She's been documenting everything. Ask her about the special transfers that happened during midnight shifts. Mike felt the floor shift beneath him. Dr. Rodriguez had been their strongest ally, the one who'd helped them turn the Raccoon rescue into a movement. But Irene beard her eagerness to transport the mother raccoon, her insistence on keeping tabs on the most intelligent animals. Suddenly, the mother raccoon's appearance at the clearing didn't seem like coincidence. You're saying Dr. Rodriguez is part of this? Mike asked, though he already knew the answer. Part of it. Jack actually laughed. She runs the East Coast operation. The Wildlife Center is perfect cover. Who questions animals being moved between rehabilitation facilities? The Corridor Project just makes it easier. In your viral video, free advertising for which animals are worth targeting. The door burst open. Agent Phillips strode in, badge out. That's enough. Dr. Maria Rodriguez is being arrested as we speak. We've been building this case for months. Your friend Jack here isn't giving us information. He's been working undercover with us for the past year. Mike stepped back, the pieces falling into place. The knowing smile, the obvious capture attempt, the convenient appearance of the mother raccoon. Jack had orchestrated everything to expose the trafficking operation. Sorry for keeping you in the dark, Mike, Jack said, standing up as Agent Phillips removed his handcuffs. We needed your genuine reactions. The traffickers had to believe you were really in the dark about the operation. Your raccoon rescue video gave us the perfect opportunity to bring it all to light. Sarah entered the room, her expression a mix of relief and amazement. The mother raccoon, you used her to draw attention to the clearing. You knew we were watching. She was never in danger, Jack assured them. We've been protecting her since your rescue. She helped us expose their whole operation. Those coordinates in my notebook, they document every illegal transfer they've made through the Wildlife Center. Dr. Rodriguez got sloppy when the Corridor Project made her think she was untouchable. Captain Rodriguez joined them, holding up his phone. Dr. Rodriguez is in custody. We found dozens of exotic animals at her private facility, all tagged for overseas transport. The Corridor Project is being temporarily suspended pending a full investigation. Mike looked at his old friend with new understanding. All those hunting trips, all those tracking lessons. You were preparing for this, weren't you? Jack nodded. Been working wildlife crimes for 15 years. When we discovered the trafficking operation, I needed someone I could trust on the inside. Someone who'd understand why animals like that mother raccoon needed to be protected. You didn't disappoint, Mike. The mother raccoon story had come full circle. Her desperate attempt to save her baby had exposed a criminal enterprise, brought down a trafficking ring, and revealed that sometimes the deepest betrayals mask the strongest loyalties. What happens now? Sarah asked, still filming. Now, Agent Phillips said, we rebuild the wildlife protection program the right way, and we'd like both of you to help lead it. Your viral video showed what's possible when law enforcement and wildlife protection work together honestly. We need more of that. Mike looked at Jack, then at Sarah, seeing the same commitment in their eyes. The mother raccoon's trust hadn't been misplaced after all. It had helped them protect countless other animals from exploitation. One condition, Mike said, the mother raccoon and her baby, they get released somewhere safe, somewhere they can't be used as bait again. Jack smiled, this time with genuine warmth. Already arranged. Some stories deserve a happy ending.